podcast. Bassin Magazine, guys. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. With me tonight, I have Brad Yoel from Bassin Magazine. And of course, I have Hunter Baugman, Bass Tournament Angler from Arkansas, who has some exciting news about last year. How are you doing tonight, Hunter?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I'm doing good. So why don't you tell, what was the highlight of the 2022 season for you?
So the highlight of the season for me was definitely in September. I fished the NPFL, get to travel all over the country, but then I also jumped in the Plains division of the Toyota Series, which is close to the house here. And the last one of the year was at Truman Lake in Missouri. And I managed to somehow slide a win out at that one. And that'd be the biggest win of my career for sure.
Yeah, Toyota Series.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I never got. Did you ever fish what was the Toyota Series, Brad?
No, I have not. No.
That came out bad.
Had you ever been to Truman Lake?
I've never been.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah. Jay, you haven't been?
No.
And Hunter, that was your first time being at Truman, right?
That was my first time. Yes, sir.
So, what was your strategy going in? Did you get a pre-fish or?
So after church on Sunday, I made the 5-hour drive, I think, up and started on Monday morning. You know, the tournament starts on Thursday, so we had 3 days. I'll be honest, I've got a friend that lives in the area, and I grabbed him on Monday and rode around with him, and he showed me quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit of the lake, but he showed me some stuff. And, I mean, he showed me some pretty good stuff, I think, but it didn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like, we were running down the bank and catching some 2-pounders, and I felt like that was really going to be beat on. Like, I didn't think you could do that for 3 days and have a decent tournament. So on day 2 of practice, I started looking for brush piles kind of around, the lower end by the dam and marking piles. And like on day 2 of practice, I shook 50 to 60 bites out of piles with a jig without a hook on it. And I thought, man, I think this is the deal. And I changed up and threw a hook 2 or 3 times and caught keeper fish doing it. So I really felt like it'd be a deal. So the next day, the last day of practice, I spent about half of my time trying anything else, spinnerbaits, anything in the same area, and couldn't get it working. Picked up a jig, shook about another 40 bites. I think I had marked about around 100 weight points by the time the tournament started.
So were you using a structured jig? And
I was using a Brazalo custom lures of football, 3/4 ounce football jig.
Sure.
And then I was also using a 5/16 Brazalo just finesse jig that I kind of helped tweak it and design it a little bit.
What did you put on that jig?
Watermelon Candy Red Speed Girl on both of them. I've got them right here. This is all backwards, on these computers.
It is.
So that's my football jig. It's called Tiger Craw is the color.
3/4 ounce, huh?
3/4, and then this is my favorite jig. I throw it a lot. It's a little finesse jig, and it's melon like that. Melon candy. It's just green pumpkin and purple.
How'd you decide to go from 3/4 to the finesse jig and fishing shallow to deep with that?
Well, the finesse jig is it's my favorite bait. It's always on the deck. Like, I don't care where I'm going, I'll have that one out. And I was throwing it some, and I was throwing a shaky head some around those piles because I was catching them. I mean, not deep, Truman, we talked about a little bit before the show came on. Truman's not a real clear lake. 5 to 15 feet was the depth on, and it was kind of, I couldn't narrow it down any more than that. I may catch one in 5 and the next one being 15. But if you were in that range, so I was throwing a finesse jig and a shaky head through this stuff, and I was getting some bites. But when I put the football on, I think, best I remember, I just had a football with a hook cut off, so I decided to pick it up and throw it just to see. And I guess just the reaction in that shallow water of that heavy bait going down through, I mean, it was just like immediately, and it gets down in the middle of it so good, which with a jig in the heart of piles, I mean, gosh, I bet I lost 40 or 50. I mean, I lost a lot of jigs.
Yeah, I bet you did.
But all those bites, in practice, I got some bites like when you drag it up to the pile and feel it maybe bump it, you get a bite. But by the time the pressure was really on, that heavy jig was getting, I wouldn't get a bite unless I was in the heart of it, pretty much on bottom,
Yeah.
Wow. So you had to go right into that jig. Were you straight up and down from it, or were you casting
No, I was using Garmin Live Scope. I was making some just kind of half-hearted pitches, not real far and just definitely not vertical, but not long throws because I was, I didn't feel like I could ever get those fish out on a long throw, but just kind of halfway pitches out there and just far enough that I could get an angle on them, and just doing that. And basically, and what I did, I graphed 2 3/4 mile long sections. I had some piles on in practice. I went back down both of them with the trolling motor and the live scope and actually waypointed little bitty stumps and anything that I could mark to where I would have more of a milk run and not having to put it on pad between each big pile. And a lot of that stuff come off. It may have been just an old pile or even a stump and have a fish every once in a while. But I basically just snaked my way down these 2 little stretches of bank with the live scope, and every waypoint I came to, I made it was going to go down on the first, second throw. So I made 2 to 3 throws on everything and just kept on rolling. I mean, I would, like when I'd shut down, I'd have 30 to 40 waypoints before I'd ever pick the trolling motor back up.
Sure.
Did you have a co-angler with you?
I did.
How did he do with you on these waypoints?
Man, it really stinks for the co-angler when you're doing that and you've got that live scope. I was starting on a big rock pile that I found on day one, or every day I started on it. But on day one, my co caught a 4.5 off of it. And I would catch a couple fish there on that finesse jig of a morning. Most of them weren't big. His was big, and it just kind of was random and big. But most of them were like 2 to 2.5 pounders, and they really kind of calm you down for the day. But once I got on the piles, day 2, I think my co had 2 maybe, and then on day 3, my co had 2. Luckily they were close enough to the bank that they could throw to the bank, but it was pretty flat, do nothing bank, so there wasn't just a whole lot of fish. I did a lot of time, especially on day 3, because you get paired in order, day 3, like first and first, second and second. And on day 3, I went into it in 4th place. So I had 4th place co-angler. So I did on that day, I would make a throw or 2 to a pile. And when I decided to go the next, especially after I had my limit, I would point that pile to him, say it's right here. Or actually, I think we ended up turning the live scope on the rear graph so he could see what I was seeing. And I'd let him make a throw in the piles. Now, I was trying my best to help him. Unfortunately, with the bites coming the first 1 to 2 throws, it was going to be slim. And he caught his fish on a crankbait or something up towards the bank.
That's what I was going to say. Is he throwing a different reaction bait through those brush piles? I'd be throwing a crankbait trying, you're moving fast. I, as a co-angler, you really don't have a lot of say so. Hey, can you slow down? Can I fish this? That sort of deal. But if he would throw a reaction bait, a spinner bait, a crankbait, a heavier spinner bait to get down in those brush piles while you're still moving, he could get some big reaction bites. So that's what I was wondering how he did.
Right. And I think they went lighter more than they went heavier. They were throwing drop shots and stuff instead. But no, I don't think the co's ever caught I don't think they ever had a bite out of a pile, as we were going. Well, the first day he caught a big old walleye out of one. He was the guy, all he had was a 4.5 pounder, and he hooks up and he's like, this is another great big fish. And he had actually bombed like out the other side of the boat. And I mean, good on him. It didn't matter to me, but he actually landed on one of the piles that I hadn't thrown on yet because my path was going to make like a big S.
Oh,
I saw it when he threw. I thought, man, I think he's going. I don't care, but I thought, man, I think he's going to be pretty close to that big pile. And he did no more hit bottom. He set the hook, and I'm like, oh no. But it was a big old walleye. But that was the only bite that any of the co's had in the pile. It was weird. I think there wasn't a lot of fish. And then especially on the few stumps and stuff I had, I mean, I could see those fish. I'd scan them and you see one fish sitting next to a stump. A lot of times they were a little bit better fish. They were 3+ but you throw out there and catch those as well.
So
Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
What trail are you going to follow this year?
I'm going to fish the MPFL. The Toyota Series comes to Lake Dardanelle, which is still not home, but it's awful dang close. So I'll fish that one. I'm probably not going to fish a full division of the Toyota this year. Last year I did the Toyotas, the MPFL, and then there's this thing called the ABA Top 150.
Sure.
And it was 12 out-of-state multi-day tournaments, and I kind of overloaded myself. And I came home and fished about 35 local tournaments here while I was home. So I'm still going to fish the local ones. I expect to fish 40-plus local tournaments, but as far as traveling out of state, I'll fish the 6 MPFLs, and then that one, I guess it's traveling. I'll drive about an hour and a half to Dardanelle and fish that one Toyota.
Hey, Darnell's pretty hot. The Hobie Series was there last year, and a 15-year-old kid that bought a kayak a week before won that.
Oh,
that was Boom Boom's kid.
Yeah,
Madison's kid.
Yeah.
I saw them. I actually did a speaking deal for their high school fishing team a week after he won it, and he had the trophy there for pictures. And Fred's like, "Did you bring your trophy? Because I just won mine." I'm like, "No, Fred, I'm not driving around with my trophy in the truck." My gosh. But
so funny.
Man, they're good people.
Oh yeah. I went over there at Christmas and spent some time with them, and their parents live. His wife's parents live in the neighborhood that my parents live in. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. So. Yeah, they're great people. Great people.
They are. We've got, I'm sure if you've been around him much, you've heard him talk about Horizon Trike Marine, the boat dealership in Clarksville. That, that's kind of how we know each other, is through that.
Okay.
That's where I bought my boats for years.
Okay.
We have a comment from a viewer. He said, congrats on your, he said MPFL, but he meant Toyota Series events.
Thank you very much.
One of our viewers congratulating you.
Thank you.
That's Cajun Rob.
Cajun Rob doesn't work on Wednesday nights. He's here for every single Bassin Magazine Weekend Angler podcast.
He's also here for every one of my Let's Talk Fishing podcasts. So
yeah, that's awesome.
He's quite a fan.
Cool deal.
So you're gonna go ahead, Brad.
Oh, you're all right. Go ahead.
So where are you going to be fishing the MPFL? Do you know yet?
We start mid-March at Pickwick, and then we go to Wright Patman and Texarkana, and then we go to. Oh, now you're making me think.
Man, I wouldn't get past Pickwick. That lake is so amazing.
Man, I'm excited about it. I've always been there in the heat of summer. I've never been there, but I think we are going to just mash them in mid-March.
Yeah, it's just. Man, awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure.
So many different things you can do at Pickwick. Jeez.
A weekend angler can go there with no plan, kayak, boat, probably from the bank, no plan, go, put in the boat ramp, turn immediately either way, whatever direction, and figure fish out and catch fish immediatsmediately. That
Absolutely.
Kentucky Lake probably have more fish than I've ever seen anywhere.
And one thing I'm really excited about the smallmouth. I mean, they're always there. You catch one every once in a while, and I don't know that I'll focus, like solely on smallmouth, but that time of year, I mean, the smallmouth play a really big role. Like if you catch 5, they're liable to weigh 25 pounds.
Yeah.
How much fun is that? Jeez.
Yeah.
That almost sounds like Green Bay. Jeez.
I went to Pickwick with the Department of Tourism for Tennessee and fished with Bethel University coach.
Yeah.
And he was our guide. And people can look him up, but he said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." And I've never thrown swim baits on offshore structure, and wow, just tore them up. Just never even learned how to fish like that, and just never even caught so many fish. And we don't have that type of fishing here in Oklahoma. So when you go somewhere and you learn something, you try to come back and duplicate it, and it's just a trip that was never been duplicated. That place is amazing.
it's hard to duplicate Tennessee River anywhere else in the world.
Right. Yeah, I love Kentucky Lake a lot. Whether it's ledges, whether it's I've got 5 holes. I think I could go catch fish right now out of those holes. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. And Kentucky Lake. I've heard it's coming back because it got pretty
yeah.
brutal. But man, that whole river system is just phenomenal. I went to Gunnersville and Chick for the first time last year, and both of them were. We weren't at either one of them at what I'd say just prime times, but like it was still good. We were at Gunnersville between when they was on the bank, when they really got out there, was kind of out there.
Yeah.
And then Chick, it was just hot when we were there. But I mean, man, like I caught 6-pounders at both places. I mean, it was good.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
So Hunter, one of the things we'd like to talk about here on the Bassin Magazine podcast is confidence. It seems like you talk a lot about jigs. Is that what you have the most confidence in as an angler?
It is. That's the little finesse jig I was showing y'all. That's 100% my. That doesn't mean that's the only thing I'm gonna throw. But if you said pick one bait and go to a lake you've never seen and catch a fish, it would be that little finesse jig. I mean, it's treated me very well over the years.
And do you usually put speed crawls on them?
I always put speed. I'm not one of much change. Matter of fact, I'll always put the same color one on there.
What's a technique that you would like to learn that you don't do enough of?
Glide baits. Hands down, I was talking about that yesterday. I've got to figure out what in the world I'm doing with glide baits because I have no idea. But competitively, I'm losing money by not knowing.
Yeah. Something that we did an article on in the magazine about glide baits. If you will use them as a search bait and watch the bait and watch the fish react, you're going to catch fish on the glide bait not expecting to. If you'll just throw it as a search bait to see if you got followers or everything, it's going to be. And I'm horrible about it. I'm not saying I'm good. I've ever done it, anything like that by any means. I've got a box of them. It's so hard for me to throw it because I'm like, I got to throw something I got to catch fish on. But
yes, but you live in the region I do, and it's those Table Rock, Bull Shoals, Grand, those Ozark lakes, man. There's a lot of fish get caught on glide bait, and that's I know it, and I still don't ever get them out of the box, so I've got to put my time in.
Well, I'm like, oh, this thing weighs a pound. Let me throw it out there, and it goes, and it just barely sinks. And I'm like, I could be casting and reeling, waiting on this thing to sink.
That's same with the A-rig. I mean, I'm still, and it's not for an ethical reason. Like, I'm not a fan of throwing the A-rig. Like, I don't like it. I don't like having to rig it. I don't like throwing it. But I was so against it because it was so bulky and dumb when it came out. I got tired of getting my teeth kicked in. And, like the NPFL, we can't throw it. But, here locally, it's like, okay, I've got to throw it. I mean, if I'm going to compete this time of year especially, I've got to throw it,
Yeah. I've only caught 3 on it, and they were all, small fish. It's not like I caught 5-pounders on it or anything like that. I've seen the videos. It just doesn't happen to me, but
it just hasn't happened. Nope. No.
I mean, it's a situation thing again. You put it down. Why wouldn't it work year round if they're eating a swim bait? If they're eating shad, it should work year round, but it's a mental thing. People put it down, and, we talked last week about a guy. He throws jerk bait year round.
Yeah.
That's something that he grew confidence in, so he does it. So that's where Jay's going with confidence bait and what I wanted, why I was asking you, what's a technique that you wanted to learn to grow confidence in?
Right.
So if the weekend angler says, okay, I want to throw glide baits, he's got access to a good, decent pond that has fish in it. How does he go about learning how to throw that glide bait and practicing with it to build confidence?
Man, YouTube is your friend on that. I mean, that's literally what I've been doing is watching videos on YouTube, and you've got to buy the baits, and they're not cheap. I mean, there's some that are cheaper than others, but they're not cheap and they're huge. But you got to have equipment to be able to chunk these big things. But I've got 2 or 3 people that are good at it that I can visit with, and other than that, it's YouTube. I mean, that's how you learn for the most part, and then go do it. Until you figure it out.
Yeah.
You
Time
got
on
to
the
get
water.
out there.
Time
You
on
got
the
to
water.
get out.
That's what we go after. Time on the water.
There's
Yes.
no substitute for time on the water.
And
Right.
and that's what it'll take. Like YouTube or advice get you to where you're not just wasting time. You know what you're doing, but it's going to take picking it up and spending a full day just doing that to get. I mean, forward facing sonar, live scope, the same thing. I had it on my boat for a year before I really caught fish off of it. Then when I actually was at the MPFL at Eufaula, Alabama, and it clicked. Like I was fishing piles. I knew I was looking at them with it. Like I knew that much, but I started watching my fish eat. And like I caught them. Like I had a camera for 2 or 3 days, but that's the day it clicked or the week it clicked. It clicked in practice. It was like, this is how I do this.
Yes, yeah.
And but I mean, it took actually making myself learn it and being there and doing it for it to click,
Yeah.
Well, that's time on the water. And that time on the water, you earned confidence.
Yes.
Because confidence is earned. It's not just given to you.
Absolutely. And you know what? The more times you can cash checks in tournaments or whatever you're successful at, maybe it's not tournaments, the more times you can be successful on the water, that confidence comes as well, Even with something you're not as confident with, you feel like it because you just feel like you're catching fish better when you're successful on the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what lake are you looking forward to fishing the most this year?
Man, like we were talking about Pickwick, it'd be the MPFL schedule is so good. I'm really looking forward to Pickwick. Wright Patman, we were there in 21 with the MPFL. It's a phenomenal lake. It's pretty much under the radar still. And then we get to go to Saginaw, Michigan.
Oh, Saginaw.
And
Jeez.
the smallmouth will probably win it. And I will spend some time looking for them. But gosh, that place is just phenomenal for catching largemouth.
But also go up the Saginaw River. I was interviewing a guy from that area who won a tournament going up the Saginaw River and catching largemouth.
So last year we were at Saginaw and we put in, it's like an almost 40-minute idle to the lake because you got to idle that whole last stretch. And where we were putting in, if you're going to the lake, you just turn and idle the first 40 minutes of your day.
Really?
Well, that's the same way at
it's hard on day one.
Day, yeah, you just
fishing. Do what?
A lot of guys with the brand new motors find out they have problems during that idle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good break-in place if you have to idle.
Yeah, for sure.
Yikes.
Saginaw's not very big, is it?
Oh, it's little bitty. No, the bay is 70 miles long by 30 miles wide, just the base.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a part of Lake Huron. And it's,
yeah. Okay, I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, Lake Huron. Yeah.
I was at one point in practice. I was where all I could see was water to sky all the way around me, and I wasn't even to the lake. I was just in the bay.
Wow.
Yeah. And that bay can get absolutely brutal.
Oh,
yes. It was. I ran about 25 miles out. And the wind picked up no more than I got there. And I'm like, I don't know how long I need to be here. And within about 30 minutes, I started heading back. And I mean, I felt like I'd been in a car wreck by the time I got back. It beat me to death.
Oh, man.
And it probably wasn't very deep when you got out there 25 miles, was it?
No, you get outside that shipping channel. It's not deep at all.
Yeah, there's the trophy potential there is absolutely incredible. It's not hammered like Lake St. Clair is, or a lot of the other more popular big smallmouth areas. And I would consider that to be one of the premier big smallmouth area. Just not a whole lot of people talk about it.
But I had a decent tournament and I was throwing a frog in just like duckweed. Gosh, I went blank.
You were throwing a frog off the floor?
No, I was in a creek. I found a river that had a bunch of largemouth, but I mean, catching like 2.5, 3 pound blacks on a frog and duckweed, that's home. I mean, that's Arkansas,
So, and you know what? Those fish are probably never targeted. Shallow water, largemouth bass in northern Michigan.
Yes, for sure.
I lived there
and that goes back to the confidence y'all are talking about. I mean, just you travel and you go to somewhere, you try to find what you need to do to win, but at the same time, you got to find, if you don't find the winning fish, you do what you're competent doing, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's awesome. You went to Northern Michigan and you threw a frog. They might have never seen frogs. And I'm not saying anything bad about the fishermen in Northern Michigan. They know what they're doing, but they get into a mindset and this is how it is for bass. And
right.
I thought St. Clair was Northern Michigan. Actually, Sault Ste. Marie's Northern Michigan. That's the furthest north. That's where I fished. Yeah, that's my first Canada trip.
I'm excited. We're my parents. So I travel. I've got a wife and a 19-month-old daughter and a 2-month-old daughter. So they travel with me. And at this one, one time last year, when we went to Erie, my parents drove up and hung out. My dad got to practice with me a little bit. And I think they're going to do the same thing at not St. Clair. Now you get me saying that. Saginaw. But then when we leave, we're going sure enough, Northern Michigan up towards Mackinac or
Mackinac
Island.
Yeah.
We're going up there. And, of course, the girls are all going kind of to go do their thing. But Dad and I are going to go hit some of those little lakes, that you don't really hear anything about. I'm excited. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good fishing because the fish up there, they're fished after, but different techniques and things like that they've never seen before. So,
right.
And you might catch a pike, you might catch a muskie, you might catch a bass. It might be a smallmouth, a largemouth.
I'm in. If I get to pull on them, I don't care what they are.
Yeah, that's what I said up in
Michigan is such a fun state.
On the Mississippi River in on pool 12, I hooked in a pike. I caught so many pike on the stupid topwater. Man, I cannot think today. I'm trying to think where we were.
You were probably in La Crosse.
In La Crosse,
in La Crosse, if it was the Mississippi River.
Yeah, on a whopper plopper. Man, I lost 3 whopper ploppers. I caught probably 30 pike, but I caught 30 bass in between those. So
yeah,
do you keep throwing?
That's somewhere I've always wanted to go because I pretty much learned how to bass fish on the Arkansas River here.
Yeah,
and I know it's different, but it's still a river. That's one of the few, in my mind, one of the few places you see on the national schedule that's actually river fishing.
yes.
And that's. I want to go. I'm ready. I don't know. It's not this year, but I hope one day I get to go.
Yeah.
That's where I've done most of my tournament fishing is Mississippi River at La Crosse.
Really?
I love that place, man. There's so many different things you can do. In fact, if you like to throw a frog, that's a good place to throw a frog on the duckweed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so not what you think. So Arkansas River that runs through Tulsa right here, is so different than your river. You've got barges down there, things like that. All that stops before it gets to Tulsa. We got 3 feet of water and 500 yards of sand.
Right. Y'all have jetties?
Nope.
Do you not?
Nope.
Really?
It has to flood for the river to fill, and it's made for flood control. That's what it's. Gotcha. That's what it's there for. I said paid for, but that's what Tulsa uses it for, flood control. And there's no boat ramps on it. There's no, you can walk the bank and fish, deep holes that got washed out. And when I say deep holes, I mean maybe a 5-foot hole.
Right.
But the further south and east you go, the deeper it starts to get in the water. But man, there's a guy with a jet boat that I went out and I was like, I've never been out here, and wow, what a fishing experience. Big striper in there. Really?
I guess what Muskogee is about where it starts getting bigger.
Yeah, that's where the port ends, and then there's the Verdigris River meets the Arkansas River meets Grand River out of Grand Lake in the Hudson Lake in the Fort Gibson Lake, and then Muskogee, the dam's probably 8 miles away, and then all 3 of those rivers meet in Muskogee.
Gotcha.
And the navigation continues up the Verdigris River instead of staying on the Arkansas side.
Okay.
So it goes up to the Port of Catoosa.
Huh. There you
Yeah.
go. Learn something
Yeah.
every day.
And there's like 3 locking dams in between Muskogee and there might be 2. There might be. Yeah, I think the third one's in Weber's Falls where it meets another river system. 10 Killer flows into it down there. I mean, there's water everywhere. But if it's this deep, then, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So,
So you get down here like Little Rock Pool, Little Rock, Arkansas. That's
yeah.
where, that's home. And we're fishing with bums under bridges and culverts everywhere, and like 15 bridges in the pool and barges just nonstop going back and forth,
Right.
and jetties every 50, 75 yards.
Yeah,
The whole
it's
different ball game.
Yeah, Muskogee. That all starts in Muskogee. I mean, so they don't. It's hard fishing, but the Verdigris River is great fishing because it's deep because barges go up it and stuff like that. And there's creeks that flow into that. There's an old river that is still cut out, even though it doesn't flow, so you can get off in the backwater. And there's one spot that it just lily pads over, and there's no barges back there, but boats go back there because the fish are back there to frog fish and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
huh?
And if anybody's watching that knows where that is, there's no fish back there, so stay out of it. Go practice your confidence frogging back there, because, yeah, that'll humble you. Jay,
So when's your first tournament of the year?
Yeah.
March 4th at Dardanelle. I've got a club I'm gonna fish. First NPFL's March 14th, maybe. Second week of March, I think, is when I leave for Pickwick.
Woo.
So I got a late start this year. I like it. I'm a wuss. I don't like fishing in the cold, so I've enjoyed not having to get the boat ready and broke in and everything yet.
Right. What's off limits periods on some of these tournaments? Can you go a week early and fish until the day before, or?
No, so they're trying to fill the field still for the NPFL. So their off limits is a little bit goofy right now because they're leaving it open until the shutoff day. But normally it goes off limits January 1, and you can be on. That's information. Then you can be on water up to 4 weeks out, I think. Then for those 4 weeks, it's off limits completely for everybody. Then we get 3 days of practice, then an off day. They call a media day. We go do. A lot of times we go work with different organizations around the host city and help do different things.
Yeah.
And then 3 tournament days with no cut, full field all 3 days.
That's awesome. Good deal. Good deal. Well, that's my questions for you, Jay. Did you have any more questions?
I don't have any other questions. So, do you have any shout outs you'd like to do, Hunter?
Man, y'all just go check me out, hunterfishes.com. If y'all hop on the website, man, I got some awesome sponsors on there. Stick 5 Rods, Brazalo Custom Lures, both those, Motivated Fishing. All 3 of those, you can use the code HunterFishes for a discount on their products. From that website, you can go to all my socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Check it out. I actually put a video on all of it today for kind of a walkthrough of my new 2023 Blazer. So somebody much more talented than myself videoed and edited it. It's pretty sweet. So y'all go check that out.
Blazer Boats?
Blazer Boats, yes, sir.
And Horizon Marine.
Blazer Boats, Horizon Marine, Mercury Motors, Bob's Jack Plate. Takes all of them, man, to get me on the water.
Good Bob's Machine Shop. We just did a story in the issue that's at the printer on Bob's Machine Shop.
Really?
Yep.
They are one that came along after last fall, so new one to me. Excited about that. But
excellent.
Been running Mercuries for most of my life, but been running Blazers this is my 4th one in 5 years. So
sweet.
Really liking my Blazers.
Good. Well, congratulations on your win, and thanks for coming on.
Thank y'all very much for having me. Y'all have a good evening.
Yeah, so much appreciated.
Yes, Hunter.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for coming on, Hunter. I'd like to thank everybody for watching the Bassin Magazine podcast. The Bassin Magazine, guys. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And you know what, guys? It's Wednesday night. go ahead and plan your fishing trips for the weekend now, because you only get to do this once. And stick around, Hunter.
Yes, sir.